Hello. I am back, and I am here for episode 3 of Cruelty Squad. I I I don't really know. What do you if you were to try and classify my manner of speech, would you say that because I have a very specific measured response to things that my responses are robotic or simply that they're measured? I feel like those two terms have the ability to coexist without invalidating one another. But I would be very interested to see what anyone else has to say. Um, Anyway, in back in terms of Cruelty Squad, this level, I don't know if I explained any of the points of any of these levels so far. This prior level, we're supposed to be killing the traders that are in the pharmacokinesis because of the embezzling that they've done and the gambling. Very not good. We go to a casino later. This, from my understanding, is basically like, yeah, this is the CEO's office of I believe, yeah, the pharmaceutical department. Anyway, Paradise is basically just a normal neighborhood, except for the one guy who has this universe's version of Funko Pops, but legally distinct. Yeah, see, it even says it right there, I think. Oh, and the town was built on a mass grave, so and we also gave them money that they didn't pay back. So for multiple reasons, we're getting rid of their people. That is Goatsy Tech as the company, and I think the model that you use that is in the basement is one that you don't ever really see normally because he is always in the dark. So you either have to see him washed out or with darkness on him, or like it's hard to just like see his actual character model unless you rip it from the game. Anyway, I'm going to go to this level here, Sin Space, which was another really strong gatekeeping moment because this level, this is about the point when I started grinding for money. Let me check how the stock market's doing actually. I don't remember at what point. It's after this mission. So I'm going to stock up on a couple of things. No, I can't. I have 1,300. I'll be alright. Can I buy... Game is actually the best investment right now. I cannot buy Game. It will not... It has been patched out of the Game that you could buy Game. Depressing. Okay. Well, I'll just buy pretty much anything that's low then. Let's go Sacred. I can't buy that either. Oh, I have no cash. Where's my holding, son? Oh, livers. Oh, yeah. Let me sell this spine in exchange for some Godhead. I'm stinky. Didn't even realize. Oh, and this is the company that made the game. Consumer Soft Products. 69. And 14 on the inside. Anyway. I'm gonna just buy one of every stock that I have access to. That one does not let me buy it for some reason. Can't get that one. Godhead. Definitely gonna get some Godhead at some point. I can't afford any of this. Alright, well, let's continue then. So we're trying to kill the CEOs. We have rockets going to Mars, and they are too efficient at actually getting there properly, so we have to, like, engineer a rocket malfunction by killing the engineers. That's the summation of this story. But yeah, I feel that there is a very specific and gripping message to be found in this game as long as you like actually sit down and look at it. I feel like there is a lot of things about this that line up. I'm sure I've just talked in circles at this point. And I'm not fully certain how many... well, I guess I'm arguing a statement that doesn't really require argument, because the concept of what I'm hoping to accomplish is still relatively in its immaturity. It's not quite really where it should be yet. So the fact that I even have a ground zero of a concept, I feel probably should be something that I would normally say is quite an accomplishment and something to be proud of. But because I have extremely high expectations of myself, I generally feel I will not allow myself to rest until the product is complete, even if it's something that will take several years to accomplish. So what does that mean for me as an individual? Well, it means one of two things, generally speaking. That either means that I have to become like incredibly powerful and smart and cool and stuff, which some people argue that I am, or I have to start outsourcing my problems from one person to the next. So it ends up feeling like I have to explain the same situation 13 times over, but I feel like that's just kind of how the frame data for the world looks. If you don't normally function as a computer. There are people who functionally are in no way indistinct from a computer, in that their personality is so hardwired into what they're doing. Like I can sit here and just talk about all this nonsense while playing this game, because I know this game like the back of my hand. But if it were any other game, I would be stressing out rather than saying, oh, hey, well, what do you think about the price of tea in China? Well, the price of tea in China is literally the same talking point as how is the weather, just turned on its head. Very, very, very slightly. In terms of perspective, it's just based in a slightly different narrative. So I feel like asking the same question, being a staple of multiple languages, is kind of the point of humanity, almost, in that you're just retranslating. Like, you created an entire language just to figure out how to use the bathroom functionally, is what I'm interpreting other languages existing as. And I don't have any data points currently to suggest any other point has very much merit. But I'm literally currently inviting the data points to present themselves by stating that I have never heard of them or seen them or anything before. I feel like the point is that the point always makes itself if you know where you're aiming. Like you can the distinction between where you're going and having started are very subtle differences to the opinion of the universe itself, rather than that of the person who is trying to observe it, because the person who is trying to observe it has a very limited constraint to everything that they do, because they have a limited lifespan. But the universe itself, theoretically, I say theoretically because theory applies only to negative numbers. As far as I'm aware, again, I could be disproven. If anyone has a counter theory or hypothesis or some sort of other statement, usually the most common thing that I've seen as a counter to what I generally believe is people trying to break down my statements into as small pieces as possible. And generally, I feel that I line up the definitions of what I'm trying to say well enough that the general definitions are understood by every party involved in the scenario as to the best of my ability. I'm, of course, quite fallible, being, limited to the bounds of humanity and humanism. But I don't think that that's inherently a bad thing. And I think that these bounds, like most things that we have done in our lives, exist to be broken in some form or another. I think that basically everyone has a message that is subtly unique to their perspective, and it comes out of the universe in different ways based on the perspective of the observer. But we internalize that as it's all about us, because it's a very difficult concept for a human to say, well, I am a circle, because most people don't know that they are a circle, or they don't know that where they fit, generally speaking. Whether they fit in with a group, or whether they fit in best alone, or if they don't, if they need to fit in, if they don't need to fit in, what are needs, where do needs come from, who established the needs, was it all understood at some point by all of humanity, or is this something that we just gradually got to over time? Are we at a point now where all of humanity does know and have basic needs? Like, are there people who are unaware that you have to eat to survive? Because I, as a human, have to tell myself to eat to survive. Like, I manually have to eat. Food is fuel. You don't, generally speaking, I do not care what the taste is of a particular food, because I feel like that is a selfish thing. Because definitionally, the self doesn't exist without your opinion. So if I don't give my opinion, I functionally, mathematically, don't exist. And the more that I do exert my opinion, the more I exist functionally, numerically. These are not necessarily proper qualifiers for statements that work inside normal boundings, unless we start including theoretical physics, though. Like, this is all just math. This is all just, I'm trying to basically create a set of tools with which to say, hey, I'm going to build something extremely vague, so that I can functionally build anything, because if the basis is strong, you can build just about any structure. I feel like this is commonplace knowledge, and something that all of humanity knew at one point, or should still know, but a lot of people forget, because they tend to think that they are a lot weaker and a lot more efficient than they are. We are very efficient machines at what we do. We always have been, and I haven't had any choice but to do the things that I do. Like, every moment I'm actively not doing what I desire is a moment that I feel like is wasted, generally speaking. But logic would state, if imaginary numbers are real, that there is no such thing as a wasted moment. Therefore, that entire loop that I just did was all so I could relax about 1%. And it worked, and it's really, really nice. But I completely forgot about that thing. I had only seen that thing in post-commentary. That did not even enter my mind as a object that existed until just recently. And I put 50 hours into this game. That thing has no purpose. It exists as a talking point. And I feel that is so very emblematic of humanity. That's just what art is people just saying, hey, I did a thing, and wanting to make conversation out of it. Like, I feel like that's what I'm doing right now. Like, I am currently that object in its mind. I'm assuming a lot of things by trying to state that, because it feels like, well, does a rock have a mind? Well, I don't know. I've never been a rock, as far as I know, but I could have been a rock. Like, have you ever tried to be a rock? Well, no, but people have referred to me as a rock in specific circumstances. I was once referred to as the Rock Man, and there are also other gentlemen who are referred to as rock men for various and sundry reasons, whether that mean you are a person who works a mine and therefore you are around a lot of rocks, or if you're a person who just does electrical music. That's also a rock man, is it not? So then you start making some very interesting other distinctions. Well, then what's the difference between a rock man and a rocket man? Like, is it a small rock? Is that functionally what a rocket is? I believe rocket is derived from the same word that missile is derived from, so functionally, yes. A rocket is a small rock, theoretically. but it's also in the same lineage of linguistics as saying something like burrito. A burrito is a small donkey, yet you are not eating a small donkey necessarily every time you are consuming a burrito. So, the question ends up being, where do you draw these logical distinctions? Is it between languages? Do each language have their own subculture? Yes, they do, in theory. So, do these subcultures warrant their own substrata of understanding? Probably they do. Let's just, for the sake of argument, let's just presume that there is at least one situation in which it would be useful, and as such, bring that information with us into the future rather than lose it. And I feel like this general concept is what everyone's operating principle, generally speaking, is one way or the other. This is what I would define as the path of least resistance, but it's only the path of least resistance that I made over an intensive amount of struggling to get where I am. And it has taken years and years to prove to myself, primarily, because I figured the only way that I could ever prove something is if I believed it. So it's one of those, which came first? Did I have to prove to believe it, or did I have to believe it to prove it? Well, does it matter if I end up believing something? What do you think? I think that everything matters. I think everything has to matter, or else nothing matters. Therefore, we may as well take the logical distinction of saying, if everything matters, we may as well have a fun time doing a whole lot of nothing. That was a lightning strike in-game. I didn't realize it was raining. Interesting. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, substrata. Yeah, it's not so easily to define where things begin and where they end. I feel like this entire process is something that it comes about from your attempt to understand yourself more than anything, and you end up questioning things. You question every second of every day without even thinking about it. You say, "Hey, am I a reliable narrator?" Because if I'm not a reliable narrator, then nothing that I know exists as far as I can prove. So there's nothing to say that my couch doesn't get up and walk away tomorrow, because I don't know if that's how the boundings of reality actually are. And the only way to prove that is to bring yourself all the way through to the other side of that thinking and say, well, the only other side is up, functionally, from where I'm going, if I want to assume that there is good. Like, again, I don't know if I've stated this before or if I'm just getting my trains of thought confused, but I believe that there are functionally infinite positive universes, but not functionally infinite negative universes. I do not think that negativity is a necessity of humanity. I think people only think it is because that is simply how the human brain internalizes things that are too confusing for it to have as a concept. You just basically fill in the gaps automatically for the pieces that are missing. And I believe over enough time that you can convince yourself of anything. So if you can convince yourself of anything with enough time, then you will be able to literally make your own reality. And if you are able to make your own reality, and you say, let's make a really, really, really good reality. Well, if you do that, odds are, if you make a good enough reality, some people might like the new reality that you're making. And in that version of understanding, you find that all humans matter, because they all are data points from a unique perspective. Each character in this level matters. Each character in this level is as much important as each one of these stocks, because each one of these data values is what makes this game this game. You can find these answers that I am saying, these things, these circles, these logic loops. You can find the same answers that I have found everywhere you look. It's just particularly easy for me to explain it on a specific backdrop. And the backdrop that I have chosen is one that I feel comfortable in because I feel very few people understand this game the way I do. I wouldn't say that I necessarily feel a personal connection with the game maker, but I feel that the game maker is, in fact, stating a very basic human truth in the making of this game, in that the world as you know it is largely based on a couple of key factors. Generally, from my understanding, what one could conceive as order and what one could conceive as chaos are generally what people agree upon are two things that could be defining forces for most things humanity touches. This is all very, very purposely vague on purpose, again, to be all-encompassing. So, where do we go from there? Well, you start defining. What do you define? You define the things of importance. Well, what is important? What is important is whatever you define as important. It's really that simple. So, what you can start doing is saying, I want to be this. And then you think that you are that. And then you imagine being that. And you get to the point where you are that at some point or another by believing it enough and being it. It's not enough to simply believe it if you're not acting the part. So what does that mean about humanity? Well, humanities, plural, as if there are more than one. I do not know. Do you know if there are more than one? If you do, leave me a message to let me know the correct amount. I have assumed that it is one. I could very well be wrong. And I guess the question, or I guess at this point it would be more of a statement than a question. The statement to be had here is that there is no real way of knowing for sure one way or the other. And so some people say, well, why bother? And my answer to that would be, I'm an egalitarian. I understand that by process of being, I have existed, and I know what a pleasant existence is versus an unpleasant existence, generally from the perspective of a human. Well, who gave you, expertise? I have earned my expertise through communications with the world itself, the people around me, the people around them. Just generally speaking, I feel you shouldn't have to necessarily qualify to say I am human, because being able to say that you are human means that you are human from our perspective in one way or another. We internalize sapient beings that are not sentient because we have a humanistic perspective of the world. If we did not, then we would not believe sapience is anywhere near important a distinction. But because that word exists, I believe that it is a necessary thing to use to describe the world. Anyway, got off on a bit of a tangent there. If this is still sounding like an interesting theorem, I will continue to spell out additional parts as we're going on, hopefully, and if somebody notices that I'm stating the same things before I do, perhaps you can gently say, hey, there is a flaw somewhere. Anyway, I'm just going to assume this is all flawless for now, because I feel like that is the best thing to do in terms of happiness. And then I will be able to clean up the mess later rather than worry about it right now, because I will always be able to clean it up as long as I exist. So it's not really a problem. It's a problem that I imagined. It's a made-up problem. It never happened. But yes, the values, obviously, these values stack up in a specific way that is pleasant to specific people. It is a common human thing to really enjoy numbers and watching them rise. Think about that. And I hope you have a great day and a lovely evening.